Sailing into St Vaast a few weeks ago brought back some wonderful memories of my very first visit rather a long time ago. Back in those days, you were locked into a sleepy little fishing town, lots of fishing boats and virtually no facilities at all for visiting yachts, a couple of pontoons and that was it. There were no restaurants, there were no cafes, there were no bars, there were just a couple of bakers. I had great difficulty finding a restaurant, I remember. I needed to eat one evening and there just wasn't one until I found a little place in a back street that had got just 5 tables and I think was the front room of some lady's house, and she'd turned it into a restaurant. It was a nice meal, I remember. During the daytime when I visited, there were explosions in the harbour every so often, and I inquired at the harbour office what it was all about, and it was explained to me that the town had had a vote to pay increased taxes for a few years, and they were going to build a marina, a town-owned marina in the place, and after that, of course, taxes would be reduced. So the explosions were because the floor of the harbour was rock, and in order to put the piles in, they needed to blow holes in the rock and then, I don't know, quick drying cement or something. But anyway, a transformation happened. This sleepy little fishing town has become an absolute jewel of northern France. It is the quayside is now surrounded by bars and restaurants and souvenir shops, and the 700 odd berth marina is always full, always packed, and is an absolute perfect place to visit. It's very easy for us Brits to get to St Vaast. You just go down to the Needles, turn left, sail across to Cherbourg, park up in Cherbourg for a couple of nights until the tide is right, and then make a little 30-mile hop around the Cherbourg Peninsula into St Vaast. You need to get the tide right for getting into St Vaast, because you can only enter 2¼ hours before high water and 3 hours after high water. But if you mess it up and you miss the window, it really doesn't matter, because there's an excellent anchorage just off the entrance, so you can just lower the hook in good holding and spend the night there, and then get the next tidal gate into the marina, into the harbour. The Cherbourg Peninsula is full of shallows and shifting sandbars and the tides run across there at a fair rate. It is, as I said, exactly 30 miles from the marina in Cherbourg to the lock gates in St Vaast. You can, and I did try it last week or a few weeks ago, cut across the shallows and do a little bit of sort of sandbar hopping in order to shorten the trip. I really don't recommend it. It wasn't a good idea. First of all, there are lobster pots and fishing nets absolutely everywhere. The sandbars seem to shift, and I guess they do, because sandbars shift. The tidal currents, suddenly there are currents sweeping you all over the shop, and I really don't think it's worth the hassle. I actually saw one French boat that was doing it as well get caught up in a fishing net, and the 3 people on board spent a pretty anxious hour or so trying to get the damn thing off their rudder. So, assuming that you've gone around the outside, there are 3 marker buoys, there are 3 cardinal buoys around the outside, so you just go around the outside of those 3, ticking them off until you come to Barfleur Headland. At Barfleur Headland, you start heading south and you trot down past Barfleur Harbour towards St Vaast. I've never been into Barfleur Harbour because it doesn't have lock gates, it's tidal, and the only way you can visit it is if you can dry out. And I've never had a boat that will dry. Well, I did have a catamaran for a few years, but not in. I took it down the Mediterranean straight away. Having got off St Vaast, there are a couple of South Cardinal buoys lined up with an island with a tower on it, and you just start sort of heading north towards the end of the long breakwater that comes out from land with a light on the end of it, and the island with its tower on it. You pass round the end of the breakwater, and until you do that you can't see the loch, and you can't see the marina, I don't seem to think, until then. So you come round the breakwater, hang a left, and then line yourself up with the harbour, which is a little bit to starboard. You don't follow closely on the breakwater wall, you head a little way off to starboard, and there's the relatively small lock gates ahead of you, and probably at this point you should call the Port de Plaisance on VHF Channel 9, St Vaast Marina on VHF 9. They speak excellent English and Spanish for some obscure reason, and look for a berth. I can't remember if there are traffic lights or not ahead of you. There may well be, and if not, that Channel 9 Marina channel will give you instructions as to whether you can enter or not. So anyway, you go in through the lock gates and head towards one of the pontoons that they've told you to go to. It will almost certainly be one of the first three pontoons immediately after the lock. The first one is reserved for bigger boats, 45, 50, 50-foot big boats. Next one medium size, and the third one down to around 10 meters. So as Golden Haze is 10 meters, that's where I headed for. I had got there, I'd actually been waiting around for the lock gates to open, and I'd got there almost exactly 2¼ hours before the lock gates open. So I came in and headed down towards the pontoon and selected a berth where the wind was going to push me up onto the pontoon. So all I had to do was get myself fairly close to the pontoon and the wind would push me on, and that would be easy. It absolutely wasn't like that at all. Made a total fool of myself. Came into the pontoon. The current, which flows around, because of course there is quite a strong current flowing into the harbour at 2 hours before high water still, and the current just took control of my stern, and I couldn't do a thing. A nice French guy had taken my bow line, but it was hopeless. Golden Haze's stern swung round, and I ended up against the pontoon up to windward, and and my bows were swept down that way as well. So I ended up parked up with the aid of various French people and English people on the pontoon, the opposite side from which I intended, with a somewhat red face. My blushes were slightly spared when it was explained to me that this happened every day to lots of people, because ever since they've dredged the harbour, there have been much stronger tidal currents around there, and people, you think you don't realise the currents are that strong, you don't realise there are going to be currents like that, and the wind is obviously always weaker than the current. So there you go. I got myself parked up, and it was just fine in the end, but I did feel silly. There's a there's a fuel pontoon just near the lock gates, and as I was intending to do a non-stop passage to Le Havre, I needed to fuel up. So when I went round to the fuel dock, I did it while the lock gates were firmly closed, and it was zero problem getting on and off that dock, and getting back onto my pontoon was also zero problem. So it is only when the tide gates are open and it is some time before high water before or after high water that you need to be careful. When I left to head out to Le Havre, I got off the pontoon half an hour before the lock gates open. And spent the time poodling around in the harbour, getting my fenders in and getting my warps in and ready, because I didn't want to make a fool of myself coming off the pontoon when those gates had already opened. And I think it was a good move. I think it was a good move. All the marina pontoons and facilities are absolutely new. The showers are great. The mooring cleats and everything else, and the pontoons themselves are in excellent condition. The only thing that's appalling is the Wi-Fi, of course, which is absolutely dreadful. I was stuck in St Vaast for almost a week with gales roaring up and down the English Channel, and I would have liked to have switched into Netflix as I used to in Cherbourg of an evening, because you can't eat out every night, and there was no signal at all. It is appalling. I don't understand why a marina as quality driven as St Vaast is cannot invest in a decent Wi-Fi system for its customers. Really hate it. It has, however, got an excellent boatyard at the far end, away from the lock gates. There's a 45-ton travel lift, and you can haul out there and get repairs done, work done on the boat, paint the bottom or whatever. There's an excellent chandler's just across the road from the haul-out area called U-Ship, who have got riggers and engineers and mechanics, and they can do any sorts of repairs you need on the boat. First-rate company. There is no shortage of marine engineers, motor mechanics there. The fishing fleet is huge, and there are motor mechanics everywhere. There's a huge company just by the lock gates which has got half a dozen lorries that, basically they service the fishing industry, fishing boats, but of course they can repair yacht engines as well, so there's no problem with that. There are a multitude of restaurants and bars and souvenir shops and lovely places all the way down the waterfront opposite the marina. Absolutely buzzing, lovely place to be, absolutely delightful. The only thing there's a shortage of is a supermarket. There is apparently a supermarket just outside town, a Carrefour or something, or Super U or something like that. I started to walk there once and gave up. It is some way out of town, so I have no knowledge of that. But inside town, which I had ignored at first, there's a place called Gosselin, which is painted a dark red and has a sort of Dad's Army type ancient delivery lorry parked outside, and it looks like a tourist shop. It looks like a sort of expensive tourist shop, and actually it's not. It has all the groceries that you could need. It has, it's got fresh fruit, it's got vegetables, it's even got some bread, although there are other bakers of course in town, and stacks of wine, and it's excellent, and the prices are not ridiculous. The prices are absolutely fine. There is a duck near the visitors' pontoons. It runs in and out of the harbour on the other side of the lock gates at all states of the tide, carrying tourists out to the oyster beds. You can visit them at high water when the duck has become a boat, and you can visit them at low water when the duck has become a motorized vehicle again. St Vaast is a good jumping off point for Havre if you're thinking about going into the French canal system. It's 53 miles directly from St Vaast lock gates to Havre, which obviously you can get in at any time of any state of the tide in day or night. But obviously you need to be leaving St Vaast fairly early in the morning, which requires the lock gates opening for you fairly early in the morning. Alternatively, there's Weesttram, which is only 43 miles, and you can get into Weesttram at any time of any state of the tide, because there's a waiting pontoon outside just to port, and so you can tie up there and wait for the next lock gates to open to get you into the Marina area. Alternatively, there are 5 or 6 absolutely charming little fishing ports, towns, all the way around the inside of the bay, and none of them are more than about 13-14 miles apart, and so you can day trip, you can day sail around to each one. The first of which is Grand-Combe-Mézy, which is, I think it's 14 miles from St Vaast to Grand-Combe-Mézy, and I've done a video about it which I'll be releasing shortly. On the way to Grand-Combe-Mézy, there's a place called the Îles Morcof, which are a couple of islands behind which there is an excellent anchorage in about 3 meters at chart datum, plus whatever the tidal rise and fall is. Lovely little islands. One of them's a bird sanctuary, and the other one has got the remnants of German World War II gun emplacements and military establishments. Great anchorage, great way to spend a night on your way to Grand-Combe-Mézy, where it's also a place where you have to work the tides to get in there. Even if you're heading for the Channel Islands, you're going to go to Alderney and Guernsey and Jersey, etc. It's well worth just popping around the corner into St Vaast for a couple of nights. It's a really charming town. It's got lovely places to visit. It's got great restaurants and bars, and it is rightly now a very, very famous place that French people flock to in the summer to spend weekends, or to spend a week indeed, and it's well worth us yachties spending a day or two there. It's lovely. I hope this video has been of some interest. I hope it's been helpful. If you visit St Vaast and like it because of this video, then I'm absolutely thrilled. If you press the subscribe button, I'd be very grateful, because that helps me build my channel. It doesn't cost anything. It just means that you'll get a video, you'll get an email next time I release a video, and it helps me build my channel, so I'd be grateful if you did that. Anyway, whether you do or not, fair winds, safe landfalls, and yeah, bye.